Hello everyone and welcome to my ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Drew Cain has long been a central figure on General Hospital in the bustling town of Port Charles, where secrets simmer beneath the surface and alliances shift like sand. He has gone from a presumed dead Navy SEAL with a complicated identity crisis to a powerful businessman, family man, and even a congressional candidate. Drew, played by Cameron Mathison since 2021, has had a number of twists and turns, but as of late 2025, fans are speculating that his time on the canvas may be coming to an end. There are several clues that Drew may be departing the show, whether through a spectacular exit narrative, character death, or quietly fading into the background as Port Charles moves on without him. These aren't simply fan speculations. They're based on the show's current narratives, character arcs, and classic soap opera clichés, which frequently presage an eventual departure. One of the most obvious symptoms is Drew's quick plunge into villain in 2025. Drew, formerly regarded as a noble figure, a former prisoner of war who rebuilt his life after realizing he wasn't Jason Morgan, but his twin brother, has transformed into someone nearly universally detested in Port Charles. His antics have alienated almost everyone around him. He launched a congressional campaign, restoring the Cain surname in an attempt to gain credibility, only to wreck it with irresponsible actions. Affairs became his trademark, starting with Nina Reeves, which shattered trust, and progressing to an affair with Willow Tate, the wife of his nephew, Michael Corinthos. This was more than just infidelity. It wrecked Michael's marriage, resulted in custody fights over W.Y. and Amelia, and positioned Drew as a major home wrecker. But it did not end there. Drew blackmailed Portia Robinson, manipulated events to incriminate others, advocated for the demolition of the Cain crypt, and even engaged in illicit activities that enraged mobsters such as Jen Sidwell. He left Ned Courtroom to perhaps die of a heart attack, a secret that is about to come out in early 2026. He punched below the belt in business rivalry, fired Nina from Crimson only to reverse judgments on a whim, and paid off witnesses such as Cody Bell to keep his secrets hidden. In soap opera parliament, when a character burns bridges with family, the courtons reject him, forcing him to return to the Cain surname, friends, and even neutral parties. It is frequently a prelude to isolation. Isolated characters are prime candidates for exits. Either they leave town in disgrace, go to prison, or die because no one is there to grieve or fight for them. The peak of these signals occurred in September 2025 when Drew was mysteriously shot. An unknown assailant shot him twice in the back from close range, leaving him battling for his life. He lived thanks to emergency surgery, but the catastrophe completely changed Port Charles. Almost everyone had a motive, including Sonny Corinthos for Drew's role in breaking up Michael's family. Carly for lingering betrayals, Michael for the affair and custody threats, Nina for humiliation, Willow for manipulation, Tracy and Ned for family betrayals, and even peripheral figures like Portia or Curtis for the fallout from blackmail. The shooting sparked a whodunit that dominated fall storylines with suspects stacking up and alibis falling. In soap operas, a high-profile shooting like this rarely results in the victim simply recuperating and moving on. It frequently ends with revelation revenge, and in certain cases, the victim's permanent deportation if redemption is impossible. As 2025 came to a close, Willow Tate's trial for allegedly shooting Drew exacerbated the drama. Willow married Drew in a contentious ceremony ostensibly to strengthen her defense or affect outcomes, but fissures appeared instantly. Drew pressed Alexis Davis, threatened to limit Scout's family visits, and complained about expectations throughout the proceedings. Anonymous letters surfaced, implying cover-ups involving Michael and Tracy. Sidwell issued warnings, tightening the noose on Drew's activities. Even as the year came to a close, Drew comforted dangerous allies while his personal life disintegrated. In previews, the co-head writers hinted that in 2026, the shooter would be revealed along with heated courtroom confrontations over Ned's near death and a big departure due to rising strife. When writers turn a character into such a despised, unredeemable force and dangle a mystery Duma, it is usually to excuse an exit. Killing off the victim after the reveal allows the shooter, if sympathetic, like Willow, to suffer consequences without being fully punished, or it clears the way for new stories. These symptoms have been exacerbated by fan reaction. Throughout 2025, fans were frustrated with Drew's change, with many openly wishing for his death or departure. Calls for Cameron Matt's character's removal flooded social media and forums, with many characterizing the relentless hostility as tiresome. Matt acknowledged the hatred in interviews, pointing out that the script needed making Drew unlikable in order to build tension for the shooting. He accepted the challenge, although purposeful villain arcs frequently precede exits, especially when fan opposition becomes too loud. Soaps modify casts based on feedback, and when a recast or long-term players such as Matt, who entered amid great hopes following Billy Miller's departure, transitions to pure antagonist with no clear redemption path, departure is imminent. Subtle signals can also be found in contracts and behind the scenes. Matt has balanced General Hospital with other ventures such as holiday movies and game show hosting, resulting in temporary absences that fans initially mistook for exits. He promised everyone that he was not leaving. But soap operas are unpredictable, with storylines that may shift suddenly. No official notification has verified Matt's departure as of December 31, 2025, and he remains at the focus of ongoing schemes. However, the narrative momentum is pushing toward a conclusion. Drew's political ambitions have failed, his family links have been cut, and his relationships have turned toxic. If he survives the shooter expose, he is likely to face prison for blackmail or extortion. Otherwise, death would neatly tie off loose ends. Why is there so much buildup if not to assist an exit? General Hospital has a history of writing out characters when their stories get contentious or when new blood is needed. Drew's story is reminiscent of previous villains who overstayed their welcome only to be dealt a crushing defeat. Drew's survival of the shooting game time, but with 2026 previews highlighting the reveal and a surprise departure among chain reactions from Rocco's problems or Cassidy's risks, he fits as the catalyst. Perhaps he leaves town after the uproar. Sidwell completes the task, or family retaliation seals his fate. Finally, these indicators, the villain turn, universal hostility, shooting mystery, trial repercussions, family disownment, and promised resolutions, create a picture of a figure whose tale is nearing its conclusion. Drew Cain has exhausted his options in Port Charles, alienating far too many people to make a viable recovery. Whether Cameron Matt leaves the role or the character simply exits the canvas, the evidence clearly suggests that change is on its way. Fans who are torn between liking to hate him and simply hating him may soon get their wish. Drew's days appear to be numbered, allowing General Hospital to pivot to new conflicts, redeem others, and reboot the court and those dynamics he has disrupted for years. As the clock strikes 2026, Port Charles waits for the fallout, and Drew's possible departure looms huge on the horizon. This theory is based on the show's purposeful choices. Making Drew irredeemable means that his exit feels earned rather than abrupt. Soaps thrive on high-stakes endings, and Drew's trajectory suggests that one is on its way. According to one observer, he has prodded every bear, which rarely ends well in Port Charles. The reasoning is simply storytelling. Economy. Remove the enemy to make room for heroes, healing, or new threats. Drew's chapter, as dramatic as it is, appears to be coming to a close, leaving viewers to question whether it was justice or tragedy. The air around Drew Cain has altered, and longtime General Hospital watchers can sense it. It's not just one scene or one line of language, but an accumulating collection of indicators pointing in the same direction. Drew's position in Port Charles now appears to be transient, almost transitional, as if the character is being gently but intentionally guided out. It's remarkable for a show as experienced as General Hospital to build this kind of groundwork by mistake. The hints are woven throughout the tale: relationships, tempo, and even how other characters discuss him when he is not present. Drew's seclusion is essential to the story. Drew, once portrayed as a guy torn between duty, love, and family, now appears increasingly disconnected from the canvas's emotional center. His relationships, rather than growing, have stopped or become strained. Scenes that could have previously focused on Drew's internal conflict now frequently conclude with him pushed to the edges, reacting rather than directing the narrative. That change is important in soap operas. Characters that are intended to remain central are given velocity, whereas those who are bound out the door are frequently slowed down, fractured, or written into corners from which it is difficult to escape. One of the most significant clues is how Drew's romantic narrative has been handled. His relationship with Willow, which had been problematic from the start, was portrayed as intense and perilous with the potential to transform many families. However, rather than developing into a long-term stabilizing love story, it has become a source of conflict, shame, and backlash. Rather of solidifying Drew's connection to Port Charles, the relationship has made him feel more like an outsider. Willow's connections to Michael, Nina, and the Corinthos family place her at the center of the show's ongoing central drama. Drew, on the other hand, believes that removing the variable will resolve the problem. The asymmetry is telling on General Hospital. When a couple is designed to last, both spouses are intertwined. In many storylines, when just one character has strong roots, the other frequently becomes expendable. Drew's romance has limited rather than enlarged his horizons. Instead of forming new relationships, he has torched bridges. Rather than being indispensable, he has become controversial. Then there's Drew's moral viewpoint. Recently, he's been written in a way that puts him at odds with the characters the program has usually protected. Michael, Jason, Sonny, and even Carly play important roles in the story. When Drew opposes them, he is not shown as a noble hero disrupting the current quo. Instead, his behaviors frequently appear as misguided, rash, or self-serving. That framing gently indicates to the spectator where the show's sympathies lay. Daytime storytelling relies heavily on perception. A character who is frequently presented as being on the wrong side of emotional reasoning is usually preparing for a fall or a farewell. Another significant indicator is how Drew's past is being understood. His past as a Navy SEAL, hero, and survivor of unspeakable horror gave him narrative weight. Lately, those aspects have felt more like background noise than driving forces. When a show stops digging a character's background for new emotional beats, it indicates that the creators see little future promise there. Instead of starting new chapters, they are finishing existing ones. There is also a distinct lack of forward-facing plot. Drew does not currently have a long-term aim that connects him to Port Charles. He is not developing a corporate empire, fighting for custody, solving a mystery, or uncovering a months-long plot. His narratives are reactive and short-lived. He responds to crises rather than initiating them. This is a red flag for a character that intends to stay on canvas. Soaps rely on arcs that promise longevity, and Drew's current path is finite. Another subtle but important hint comes from how other characters talk about Drew. Conversations concerning him are more focused on the repercussions rather than the future plans. Characters talk about what Drew has done, how much damage he has caused, and what he might lose rather than who he might become. When a character's future is no longer foreseen inside the tale, it is commonly assumed that the show is not either. There is also a thematic pattern that General Hospital has followed for years. Characters who breach specific lines, particularly when they harm children or fracture core families, frequently face severe consequences. Drew's involvement in situations that jeopardize the stability of Michael's children and Willow's family puts him in perilous narrative area. Drew may be used as a pressure point in the program, absorbing the fallout so that others can move on relatively unscathed. That job typically culminates in an exit, whether dramatic or softly emotional. Exits are frequently preceded by a sense of increased emphasis elsewhere in the manufacturing process. Other characters are being introduced with new partnerships, renewed tensions, and long-term secrets. Drew, on the other hand, feels as if he's stuck in the same emotional rut. When airtime is transferred in this manner, it typically indicates a shift in priorities. The program is investing in characters it intends to keep front and center while others are being phased out. Another crucial symptom is the lack of a safety net. When characters are supposed to stay, the writers frequently give them at least one dependable anchor. A family member, a best friend, a job, or a mission. Drew currently lacked all four. His family relationships are strained. His personal relationship is tumultuous. His professional identity is hazy, and his sense of purpose is uncertain. With that kind of narrative weakness, an exit is not only possible, but rational. Speculation regarding actor availability and behind-the-scenes decisions is always present. Yet, even when not looking beyond the screen, the story speaks for itself. General Hospital has always been great at anticipating departures with emotional distance, moral ambiguity, and unsolved tension. Drew's arc checks all of those boxes. He feels like a man at a crossroads when staying no longer makes sense for him or those around him. If Drew leaves, it will most likely have an impact. His departure would act as a catalyst, changing Willow's destiny, strengthening Michael's resolve, and possibly rearranging the Cain-Corinthos' dynamic. Another sign of a planned exit is that the character's absence adds to the tale rather than leaving a gap. Drew's departure may mend certain cracks while opening up new ones, allowing the program to shift without losing momentum. Ultimately, the indications are not loud, but they are consistent. Drew's limited narrative space, isolation from key families, moral framing of his decisions, and absence of a compelling future trajectory all point to the same conclusion. Whether his leave is dramatic, redemptive, or softly regretful, the foundation appears to be in place. In the universe of General Hospital, when a character begins to feel like a guest in their own story, it is usually because their time in Port Charles is coming to an end. As the evidence mounts, it becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss Drew's current trajectory as deliberate. General Hospital has never hurried big exits. Instead, the show prefers to let events unfold gradually, allowing viewers to emotionally acclimate long before the final goodbye occurs. Drew's plot resembles a slow burn exit built on growing inevitability rather than immediate shock. One of the most remarkable aspects is that Drew's presence no longer supports anyone else's story. Drew has previously served as a grounding force. He was the man who stepped in when others broke apart, the voice of reason in the midst of chaos and the emotional support when families split up. Now his presence appears to have the opposite effect. Scenes featuring Drew frequently exacerbate rather than relieve tension. Conflicts do not end with clarity or growth. They finish with ultimatums, animosity, or emotional repercussions. This adjustment in function is crucial. When a character no longer serves as an emotional anchor, the show normally plans to remove them from the equation. Drew's relationship with Jason is another strong indicator. Their fraternity previously bore great emotional weight, laden with shared trauma, loyalty, and sacrifice. But recently, that friendship has felt distant and strained. Jason's return to the canvas reaffirmed his status as a central figure, and rather than bringing Drew closer into that circle, the plot subtly pushed him away. Drew is no longer described as Jason's equal or emotional counterpart. Instead, he frequently stands in contrast to Jason's clarity and moral conviction. When two similar characters coexist in soap operas, one is frequently forced to leave. Jason's presence makes Drew feel redundant, and redundancy is rarely tolerated on a crowded canvas. There is also a distinct lack of redemption beats. General Hospital typically provides characters with opportunities for introspection, repentance, or sacrifice when they are intended to last a long time. These moments rebalance viewer sympathies and alter the character's course. Drew has not been afforded that privilege. When he makes problematic decisions, the story rarely provides him with a real opportunity for self-awareness or growth. Instead, his errors grow. He apologizes, but the repercussions remain. He explains himself, but it doesn't stick. That trend shows that the show isn't concerned with rehabilitating his image, but rather with demonstrating the consequences of his acts. Pacing is another subtle clue. Drew's scenes frequently feel compacted, as if they're serving a purpose rather than establishing a future. He appears when necessary to advance another character's plot, then departs again. That is a classic transitional use of a character. He is no longer the destination, but rather the bridge. Once the bridge has completed its purpose, it is no longer required. The emotional tone around Drew has also changed. His scenes now have a quiet sorrow to them with undercurrents of regret and restlessness. He often appears to be an outcast, looking for significance in a town that no longer has room for him. This emotional framing is significant because it helps the viewer accept his departure as natural rather than tragic. Viewers are not pushed to fight for Drew to stay. Rather, they are encouraged to understand why he may depart. General Hospital has a lengthy history of writing male characters out, portraying them as challenges rather than heroes. Drew is currently occupying that awkward space. He's not the villain and he's not the rescuer. He complicates people's lives rather than helping them. Drew's existence must be handled before characters such as Michael and Willow can proceed. And in soap operas, resolved frequently means gone. There is also the topic of legacy. Drew doesn't have any children on canvas who need him, nor does he have a defining institution associated with his name. He is not associated with a hospital wing, a crime family, or a generational plot. Characters without heritage anchors are easier to develop since their absence does not create structural gaps. Drew's tale can end without jeopardizing the show's core. Even the framing of the issues surrounding Drew feels like a precursor. Problems are not being presented as long-term fights to be fought and won. Instead, they feel like walls are closing in. Every option Drew has appears to result in a loss. Stay. And he ruins relationships. Leave and he protects the little goodwill that exists. That type of narrative math frequently encourages a character to quit as the most honorable option. If Drew does go, it may be portrayed as a self-imposed exile rather than a defeat. He may conclude that the people he cares about are better off without him in a typical soap departure based on sacrifice. That would be appropriate for the tone the program has recently developed around him. It would not be necessary to rewrite his prior heroism. Rather, it would be recontextualized as something that belongs somewhere else, not in Port Charles anymore. Finally, Drew feels like he's leaving because his tale feels so complete, not because of a single big indication. His primary relationships have peaked, his conflicts have become clear, and his emotional journey has come full circle. General Hospital does an excellent job of recognizing when a character's storyline has completed its intended purpose. Drew Cain now feels like a man nearing the end of his chapter, not the start of a new one. Whether he leaves quietly or explosively, the preparation indicates that it will be meaningful rather than abrupt. Drew's departure would advance the plot, clarify other characters' destinies, and emphasize the show's long-running themes of consequence, sacrifice, and survival. In that sense, Drew's departure would not constitute a failure of the character, but rather the culmination of a journey that had run its